Star Ocean 7. Something that I never pictured myself saying after playing 2, and especially after playing the pile of horseshit that was 5. It's probably coming someday, because the last 2 games were relative successes for Square Enix. But if we were to look holistically at the series and pluck the best trait from each of them, what would we want to see put into Star Ocean 7? What mistakes have they made in the past, and how can they learn from them? What innovations have they made, and how can we make it even better? Leave something in the comments if you have a specific thought on what the next game should include, but I wanted to put my wishes out into the universe and let them manifest. So here's 7 things that I think Star Ocean 7 needs to have. By the way, I'm Black Claude Kenny, also known as Claude Kenniga, also known as Solace of Solace and Dread. We have nuanced discussions on games. If that's your jam, hit the like button to let YouTube know it, and consider subscribing. We've made a lot of videos about Star Ocean, but if you don't know anything about this franchise, the short and dirty version is that it's a franchise of action-oriented JRPGs that blends futuristic sci-fi with fantasy elements of the past. There's been 8 games in this series of varying quality. 6 of them were mainline titles and 2 of them were spin-offs. They're all loosely linked. I've linked a video up in the corner, I'm sure, explaining the series and timeline up to this point. I'm going to be talking fairly in depth about the games, so if you're not familiar with this, you may want to acquaint yourself before continuing forward. With that out of the way, the first thing that I would like to see in Star Ocean 7, the first thing on my wish list, is that I think that the next game needs to connect to Star Ocean 3. Now, I'm going to say there's a very major spoiler alert here. Something big is going to come out of my face, so if you plan to play that game, be warned. But the plot twist in that game is that they're actually all in a video game. All of history that has taken place it's all basically in a Sims game called the Eternal Sphere. This twist was infamous and extremely divisive. That said, because of how divisive it was, the game's stories since then have largely strayed away from it. But they do reference that fact more and more as new entries come out. And I think it's time to make a permanent and direct link to that game. Now, I've seen a lot of the fandom wants a game that follows Star Ocean 3, but I actually want something that's before that links to this. And I think that it can be done. The building blocks have been made. If there's interest, I'll explore that in another video. Let me know. Hit that like button, right? The second thing on my wish list is that the story and overarching plot needs to be just a touch simpler than it was in Star Ocean 6. The story told in Star Ocean the Divine Force lost its way in the later end of the second act and the third act with the inclusion of Scorpium. There was just too much crammed in with too little budget to tell the story well, making it really hard to follow, and it made for a lot of rather boring exposition dumps. Star Ocean's stories range in quality, and Star Ocean 6 is probably still middle of the road despite it being kind of weak. But I think that something a little simpler could be more impactful. Third, refine the combat of Star Ocean the Divine Force. Take what they've made and innovate, but don't abandon it. There's no doubt that they've gone a step in the right direction, adding verticality to the combat and making it even higher in speed. I think they need to take those ideas that they started in 6 and just flesh them out a little bit and then add things on top of it. We can get something truly special and maybe a little less buggy. I got stuck in a lot of the rocks and environments while I was flying around with my Duma, but holy shit did I have a lot of fun. The one thing that the later Star Oceans get right, by the way, that the older ones don't, is making the magic casters every bit as viable and fun to play as the melee fighters. But I want to see them continue to bring stuff back from the old games too. And maybe I'm going to sound like a massive hypocrite for saying this, but they really should bring back MP death. I've talked a lot of shit about Star Ocean 3 in other videos, but I have to admit that some of the things that they added in that game could be cool. Maybe even expand the active party members like they did in 5, or limit it down to 3 like they did in Star Ocean 3. I just want them to get away from this cage of being stuck in tradition. And they can do that while staying within the confines of Star Ocean and what they've already done. The fourth thing on my Star Ocean wish list is the models for the characters need some serious overhaul. Since Star Ocean 4, the characters have become increasingly doll-like, and it's been extremely off-putting to the fans. I'm not saying that it needs to go hyper-realistic or anything, or hyper-stylized, but they have got to stop with the sex doll look, the A-frame posing, and being limited to like 3 or 4 cheap animations. There needs to be some actual budget put into this. And as shallow as it may be, the character designs matter a lot to this fandom. We want something that looks good. Some of the characters in 6 were pretty great, like Midas and Albert and Nina, but Raymond's hair was a hot topic of debate. Letty was just a little too poofy. She was half the time being forced into A-frame, same for Marielle, and Elena was about as close as you can get to a sex doll. Don't even get me started on Malkia. Some of these characters really just had too much embellishment and too much going on to be good. The fifth thing in my wish list while we're talking about the characters is let's aim away from the child characters. Star Ocean has a track record of having kids in the roster, as in literally every single game, and they're almost always obnoxious. The later entries started to have more muted and down-to-earth adolescents like Nina and Relia, but why not just have a party of adults? Star Ocean does not have to be a complete slave to its traditions. I mean, as long as we don't get another Limmel, I think we should be good, okay?
Lim.
Lim? Would you rather we call you Lim?
Edgy. Ray Ray. Edgy, Ray
Edgy?
Ray. Edgy, Ray Ray. Edgy, Ray Ray.
The sixth thing on my wish list is I want branching stories and missable side content. One of the biggest charms of Star Ocean 2 to me was seeing these massive areas on the map, like a mountain or a maze, and I had no idea what they were used for until I found some secret character with dragons fused into his back, or some three-eyed adventurer lady looking for her missing boyfriend. And until you found the link to that stuff, you could just skip it and continue the story, never knowing what it was there for. That's what I want. I also love that there were side quests only doable by main characters, like specific main characters, depending on who you picked in the beginning of the game. I also love that there was more than one main character at that. Let's keep that going like Star Ocean 2 and 6 did, and just make it a little bit more than they did when they revisited it in the Divine Force. And I want missable characters that I might like to try in subsequent playthroughs. Star Ocean is really good at adding replay value to the games. I just want them to continue doing what added to the replay value before. And again, bringing back just old ideas and expanding on what we saw previously would give us something amazing. The seventh thing on my wish list is that not only does the UI need to be legible and large, but the item creation shenanigans of Star Ocean 2's remake should return in full force. Let us break the first half of that game. Let me pickpocket and affect relationships. Let us have the freedom installed in Star Ocean 2. This is the real magic of Star Ocean. It's not what's on the surface level. It's the systems behind the scenes. It's the menu, the hidden relationships, the love poured into the world around the combat and the characters. The progression system. They really let you go crazy in Star Ocean 2's first half in item creation, and I really think that they should bring this back in full force. Maybe leaving out some of the bloat with like the billion items that you'll never use, but still I want, instead of a billion, maybe give me a million, right? That's something I really think needs to return in the next game. And the last thing, and this isn't specifically in-game, so it's not part of the list, but I hope that Star Ocean 7 really gets a real budget. Like something as big as Dragon Quest. Maybe not Final Fantasy VII Remake, but something substantial. Star Ocean 6 had a fairly decent budget, but let this game cross from AA into AAA. I think that the success of Star Ocean 2 shows that there is return on investment for this IP. but they need to invest. They need to invest. Is there anything that I left out? Let me know. I can think of a few other minor things, but what do you think Star Ocean 7 should have? This is my favorite RPG franchise ever, and I love that it's still alive despite the many missteps that it took. We could be on the verge of something huge if Square Enix does the right thing. I hope they do. That's it from me. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon, and long live the Turtle Kingdom.